I did a day of disability exams 5 days ago, and I saw two interesting people that I'm going to describe in this video. And it's interesting to contrast the way they approached their disability exam. And I think they illustrate the point of this channel. Hello, I'm John Foster. I'm a medical doctor who does Social Security disability exams, and as usual, everything I say reflects my own opinions based on my own experience and study, and not the opinions of the Social Security Administration or any other medical body. Now, both of these people had genuine medical problems that limited their ability to work to roughly the same extent. And they were both honest and pleasant and sincere. The first one began by describing their previous jobs and how their medical problems limited their ability to do their old job. Their old job was quite demanding, both physically and intellectually, and they had a master's degree. After they described how they couldn't do their old job, they described a cancer diagnosis which they'd had several years ago, a very serious cancer diagnosis, and the subsequent treatment. The fact was, thankfully, their cancer had been cured and left them with no permanent problems. The second person had quite a different approach. They focused on the present and how their medical problems limited their ability to work. And they were quite specific. Their ability to stand and walk were limited, and they were able to tell me how many minutes roughly they could stand and walk. And the rest of their history went on in a similar vein. So, when I began this channel, I had no intention of talking to people applying for disability. What had happened was I worked for a company that supplied doctors to do disability exams to Social Security, and when new doctors came on, they had a lot of questions about how to do the exams. I was never taught about disability exams in my medical training, and most doctors today are not. And disability exams are very different from your typical medical exam. In your typical medical exam, you focus on two questions. Number one, what is the diagnosis? What's causing the patient's problem? And number two, what is the treatment? What can be done to help the patient with the problem? In a disability exam, the focus is entirely different. The main focus is what are the work-related limitations? What can the person do when it comes to work-related abilities? What can't they do? And what can they do but with difficulty? And how severe is that difficulty? The diagnosis is of secondary importance. And because most of these people have had their problems for quite some time, they usually already have the diagnosis. It's a rare person that I see who hasn't been diagnosed. I give the example of the unimportance of diagnosis in a person who has a great deal of difficulty walking. It doesn't really matter to Social Security if that's because they've had a stroke, a problem with the circulation to the brain, or arthritis in the knees, a joint problem in the knees. Two totally different issues. What matters to Social Security is how much difficulty do they have standing and walking. And in a disability exam, we don't focus at all on the treatment. So what happened was, the company would ask me to coach new doctors in how to do a disability exam. And so I made some videos showing my approach to the disability exam. And what I found was that my audience was more people applying for disability than doctors new to disability exams, although I still get new doctors watching my videos. And one thing I learned about YouTube is that your audience will tell you who they are. So I changed my focus from doctors to people applying for Social Security disability. And what I found when I began doing the exams was that people had very little idea of what was necessary, and they often went off in the wrong directions, in directions that would not help their disability application. And I was seeing a lot of people who were really having major medical problems and were quite disabled. And it really bothered me that these people were not giving themselves the best chance of being approved. So the first point of this channel is to help disabled people get approved by the Social Security Administration, to help them know what information is helpful and what's really not helpful. And now I'll go back to the two people that I described. The first person focused on their inability to do their prior job, which, as I said, was a very demanding job physically and mentally. The problem is Social Security does not approve disability because you can't do your old job. Social Security only approves disability if, in their opinion, you can't do any available job, and that includes simple entry-level jobs. This is sometimes a shock for people who've had high-level jobs. For example, I've had a dentist and I've had several attorneys, and they may be shocked to find out that Social Security won't allow them to receive disability if they can't do a simple entry-level job like being a security guard who sits at a desk and watches television monitors. But that's the fact. The second thing was that they focused on a very serious medical problem, and I'm not making light of cancer. Cancer is a terrifying diagnosis, and often the treatment is very unpleasant. However, this person had been cured, and they were left with no significant problems. And therefore, the cancer issue was not significant in their being approved for Social Security disability. I often see people who think that because they've had multiple operations, they should be considered disabled. And people get very upset when I tell them the truth, which is that it doesn't matter if you've had no operations, one operation, 3 operations, or many operations. What matters for Social Security is how are you now? What limitations do you currently have? If you've had multiple operations, but now you have very few limitations, you will not qualify for disability. The second point of my channel was to make my life easier. It can be very frustrating for me to have people like the first person that I described, who clearly has medical limitations in their ability to work, but who just won't provide me with the information that I need to increase their chances of being approved. Sometimes it seems to be like pulling teeth. As I've mentioned in many of my videos, one of the most frustrating things for me is to see someone who obviously has problems with their legs or standing, and they tell me I can't stand for very long or I can't walk very far. And I ask them, how long can you stand, or how far can you walk? And it's clear to me that that question has never occurred to them, and they have no idea what the correct answer is. And those sorts of answers are crucial for Social Security when it comes to having their disability application denied or approved. And now the final thing is, I'm finally starting to see a few people who watch my channel before they come in for a disability exam. And to my great pleasure, I find that they're much better prepared for the exam than people who haven't watched the channel. And the second person, the one I described who had all the clear facts, had been watching my channel, and that's why they knew what information to present and why they were specific about their limitations. So those are my points for the channel: to help people who are disabled get approved for Social Security, to a lesser extent to make sure that the con men and people who aren't disabled and are trying to get on disability are denied, and to make my life easier by preparing people to present their best case when they see me. Finally, I try to answer questions and comments, and I try to do videos on issues that are asked about. I'm feeling kind of bad because I've had several requests to do videos on two related back problems, sciatica and lumbar stenosis, and I haven't done them yet. Those are very interesting problems, and I plan on doing a video on that subject sometime in June. And if you find these videos interesting, you may want to subscribe to my channel. I generally put out one disability-related video every Friday. And finally, always remember, if it happens, it's possible.